Today we're going to continue. We're going to finish out our series on talking about habits. And to start off, I just want to you ask yourself this question. You don't think like somebody else needs to answer this question, but just your own thinking is what is usual in your life right now? What is usual? What are the things that you do consistently? Typically, what you do. What are the things that you do that are ordinary? Let me put it this way: if someone had access to you 24/7 to just observe and then write down a report of what they observed, what would they write? What would they observe of you of your habits of good and bad? What are you doing? And I was just asking this question to kind of get us back in that frame of mind of looking at what we do. What are our habits? What are the things that we are doing in life on a continual basis, whether it be good or whether it be an area we need some improvement in. And this is a good question to ask yourself through different seasons. As if you ask yourself that now, and you ask yourself that question again in 6 months from now, should there be some change in your typical behavior? What do you do in the ordinary if you're working and moving forward to change things or improve things in your life? Well, like I said, this is our last sermon on developing habits and developing good habits. And so I just wanted to do a quick review of the things that we've already discussed, the things that we've already talked about. We started with talking about small things leading to big things. Like small things give us the ability to do the big thing. And so we boiled that down to what gives us the ability to do something big is the discipline to do consistently those small things. So doing those small things consistently eventually lead us to being able to do something big. Then we talked about that it's really hard to stop old habits. It really is. You know, we can try to will ourselves as much as like, I'm going to stop to do that, but it's really hard for us to stop old habits. It's almost impossible for us to just stop old or bad habits. Because the way we usually go about doing it, and we learned that one of the basic ways to change a bad habit is to replace a bad habit with a new habit. And so we do a replacement rather than just, I'm going to stop doing this and never going to do it again, kind of a mindset coming to it. Now, the reason why we just started this whole series on habits is because a few weeks ago, Jeff challenged us to pray daily and pray daily for 40 days. And sometimes that's not in our habit wheelhouse to do that. And so this is why we started talking about this. And my hope has always been you take these habits and do things to improve your physical life, but I wanted maybe to have some inspiration for you to change things that are going on spiritually with you and being more connected to God and being more connected to one another because those are our two greatest commandments. Love God and love our neighbors. And we can find in Scripture those who relate to the position that we find ourselves in. We talked a bit about the Apostle Paul. It's something that Paul said. I'm just going to paraphrase Paul. It's not a direct quote, so this is George's version of Apostle Paul. Is Paul told, as he wrote in the New Testament, and is telling us today through those writings, that he tended to do things he didn't want to do. He said, I tend to do things I don't want to do, and then I do the things that I don't do the things that I want to do. I don't do those things. So I do things I don't want to do, things I want to do, I don't do them. And I think we can relate to that because there are things that, right, we want to do, but we don't do them. But there's things that we don't want to do, but we constantly find ourselves doing them. And so we have an example of that struggle, even with what we might consider one of the greatest Christians of all time, right? The Apostle Paul had that struggle. of moving through, developing good things, and rooting out the bad. And so I think today what we'll do is I hope this will be helpful to kind of wrap all this up and just something simple. I just want to keep everything simple in this and not get too into the weeds on habit and habit forming, is how to start a habit, a new habit, and stick with it. That's kind of what we're going to talk about today, just the simple thing of how to start a habit and stick to it. And so for our scripture, I want you to turn to Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1 be our scripture for our lesson. Mark chapter 1, verse 35. Mark 1:35. And Mark 1, of course, is the beginning of Mark's account of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Jesus has been involved in ministry and doing things. And the whole city has come out to him because they heard he's in this town and he's healing people and he's casting out demons. And so they find the place where he's staying and they bombard him. There in verse 34, you see, or 33, the whole city had gathered at the door, and he healed many who were ill, various diseases, and cast out many demons, and he was not permitting the demons to speak because they knew who he was. Verse 35 is what I want to focus on. Verse 35 says, and in the early morning, while it was still dark, he arose and went out and departed to a lonely place and was praying there. So we find here Jesus getting up early for anybody else while it's still dark to go and to pray. And what I suggest is here is we see Jesus' habit of finding solitude to spend time with the Father. Before anyone else, before any other distraction, before anyone can find where he is, and then he needs to serve and love and do, he goes and takes this time. I would suggest this is a habit of Jesus, that he does this consistently and often. And it's one of the things that helps ground him and keeps him while he's God in the flesh. He's in the flesh, right? With all the fleshly desires and all that stuff. You know, the writers of the New Testament let us know that he was tempted in every way that we were, yet without sin. So how did he stay grounded? Well, he stayed connected to God, developing this habit of prayer. Now, I'm not going to make any assumptions on you, so I'm just thinking of myself here. When I think of Jesus, if Jesus needed to do this regularly, go and pray, how much more do I need to make it a habit to go and pray? How much more do I need that, right? I don't know if you can relate to that. If you think if Jesus needed to do this, how much more then do I need to do this? And I'm not going to beat us up on the why we need to pray. You know, Jeff, I'm going to say Jeff beat us up, but Jeff he gave us the reasons why we need to do this and has encouraged us to pray. But I just want to kind of focus on how do we do it? How, not necessarily prayer, but this is used for prayer because that's the season that we're in together as a community of believers here at the Petaluma Church of Christ. But these other areas of life, whether it be physical, but also the spiritual, not beating up why, but how do we do this? How do we do this? And through this series, I've given examples of small things leading to big things. If you are here for the first lesson on this, remember there's a video of dominoes, and we had this guy had stacked up all these dominoes, and I can't remember. The last one was a couple 100 pounds, and he had that first domino, he had like on a little tweezers, right? And he placed it right there in front, and they were all small. It was just like, it was half an ounce or something. It was this tiny, and he hit that, and it hit the next one, hit the next one, hit the next one, and knocked over the couple 100-pound domino, just showing how little things can affect big. I want to give you another example, just an illustration on how getting habits to stick and working through that. I want you to think if anyone's ever had to hammer anything. Anyone's ever had to hammer anything? Anything, build anything? You know, you needed to put more than 3 pieces of wood together at one point. I think this is pretty universal. When everyone starts hammering, they usually do a couple of soft taps, right? To set the nail and then drive it in and drive it in. And then you take that piece of wood and you put it on wherever you're building. 2 years ago, Sierra and I built some shelves for the garage, right? And so we had to cut wood and hammer and nail and screw. So you build this thing out of all these small pieces. So small things leading to something bigger. So the secret, this pulls into the secret of starting a habit, the nail, sitting there with those small taps. The secret to starting a habit is like setting that nail, and you make it as easy as possible, right? Because you just don't like throw the hammer down and go in one. You tap, 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 hit, hit, hit. You start small. You start simple. You start easy. That's how you develop habits that stick. You start small, you start simple, you start easy until you can start building upon it, just as we do in construction. Because usually what we do, and I'll give an example, is like we want to work out, and so one night we're up late and we see all those workout videos you can order, right, with all these really good-looking people that turn into really, really, really good-looking people. Is right? And like, I'm going to order that. I'm going to look like a Navy SEAL or something, or in that. And so we like say like, I want to go from where I'm at to that, right? And we order it, and then you throw down the, I don't know, $199, whatever those things cost, right? And we get it, and we watch the first one and go, oh, right? And then we're done, right? Because we never touch it again. It's because we didn't start off simple and easy with a light tap to get to where we want to get. We just like, I want to just be the big thing. I just want to be the finished product of whatever it is. The same thing with, I'm going to eat healthy, right? And so I'm never going to eat anything with sugar ever again, right? So I'm going to eliminate anything that I ever thought tasted good in my life, and I'll never eat that again. And you do that for 2 days, and then all of a sudden you're like, why did I just eat the whole tub of ice cream that was still in the freezer, right? It's because we didn't start like that nail with a little tap, tap, tap to build on. We're trying to go to the end product, or we're trying to say like, this is going to be me forever, right? And it's not realistic. If we bring this over to something spiritual, like I want to read through the Bible. So I'm going to read an hour a day and I'll get through it in 6 months. Right? And you start off, you get your hour, and then the next day, it's like, oh, I didn't have time. Oh, I didn't have time. And then it's like, and then you feel shame. I think in all this, as we try to change and try to do what is good, it brings about shame. And we, as Christians, we shouldn't be living in this life of shame all the time of the things that we do. And so it becomes very discouraging, and it leads to depression, or it leads to apathy, or it leads to, I'll just, that's good for other people. I just, something's really wrong with me and I can't get these things down. So the key is start small, set the nail. So anything take away like the metaphor or the saying of this, so remember small habits, set the nail. If I'm going to need to change something, I need to set the nail. How do I set the nail? What do I need to do that? Because setting the nail is going to start setting you up for success to make those changes and to make either a good habit stick or a bad habit go away, which, we talked about last week. They don't go away. You have to replace them. So how do I replace them? You might remember at the beginning, get an index card or get a paper and fold it in 3. And in the middle there, you list your goals on the side, the good habits to get to that goal and the bad habits that need to be eliminated or replaced that are hindering from your goal. And so I just want you to envision that. If you did that, that'd be great. If you haven't, you still have time, right, to write those things down. But just thinking of goals, like all of us have goals. It can be different, and if we spent 10 minutes sharing our goals, I'm sure we could fill up a page of what everyone's goals is in all aspects of our life, whether it be something spiritual, whether it be something at work, whether it be something personal, something in the family, things that are just easy as a quality of life thing. I'd like to go hiking, 10, 14,000 foot mountains in Colorado or something, next summer, whatever. To, I really need to fix my marriage. All over the place, that the goals that we have. But every one of us has a goal, and the thing that distracts us or doesn't allow us to get to where we want to be, the thing that kind of trips us up to not reaching that goal, is a lot of times we just start with, I really want to do that. I really want this to happen. And so if we have this great desire and I want it, like somehow that's going to change it. And it never does, because I've got to pick up the hammer and set the nail. So we can wish for it. We can say, I want it. This is my plan. But when you actually take action to start to do the small things consistently, it's never going to happen. And you're always going to be like, someday I'll get to Colorado and get to all those 14,000 foot things. Someday my marriage will be fixed. Oh no, why am I getting served with divorce papers? Right? It just because that someday never happened. It never came because you didn't start the process. And so you could have a great desire to accomplish those goals, but they're not going to happen until you start doing it. So you can have this great desire. I want to pray for 40 days, but it's not going to happen until you start praying. It's not going to start until you start praying. So we can think of this way. I want to run a marathon. And so that's the goal. I want to run a marathon. So you got to look at, what are the things I need to do that? Rather than just like, I have this great desire to run a marathon. Someday I'll run a marathon. But what's the desire? What leads to actions? So the things you need to do, or you think of a few things you need to do. Well, you need to start running, right? You can just like think about, well, I want to run and never run. You're never going to run. So one of your things you need to do to start developing that, to achieve that goal, is to run. Maybe the other thing is, I need to start drinking water more consistently. And I don't need to just eat whatever I want to eat, right? It's because that's not going to get me down the track. And so if you go out to eat, like with me, don't order what I'm eating, because my goal is not to run a marathon. Order what you need to eat, right? And so you need to do those things. And then on the opposite side, maybe you need to stop staying up late, right? So you can get up early to run. And so you stop doing something so that you can do something. There's the replacement thing, so things can happen. Maybe instead you want to change your health, stop drinking all your Cokes. And you need to replace that with drinking water, and a replacement kind of a thing. And so that you can start achieving that goal to run. I wouldn't take running advice from me, so that's all I'm going to give, because you won't see me running down Sonoma Mountain Parkway in a jogging suit. Okay. But even like, take another one. I want to strengthen marriage, because I mentioned that earlier. So that's a great desire. That's a great goal. But if that's all if you just leave it at desire, your marriage will not be strengthened, because you have to do something. You have to do things intentionally. And so if you want to strengthen your marriage, try something simple. I'm going to intentionally have eye contact when I have a conversation with my spouse. That's going to do huge things in a relationship. I'm going to schedule regular date nights with my spouse, right? And so it's something tangible. It's something that you can do. And those things will help strengthen marriage. I will stop on the other side. I will stop making cases against my spouse in my head, right? That then show up in other ways. because I've created all this narrative and all this negative things. I don't want to look you in the eyes because I've created all this stuff in my head. All right, so you have to move beyond desire and actually do things that are positive and start working on the things that are negative. And so why I suggest getting a paper or index card is so that you have that dashboard for you. Just like you are when you're driving a car, you have a dashboard. It's telling you all the important things that are happening. Does it tell you everything that's happening in your car and what your car needs? It doesn't. It's just letting you know the important things. So you have just things to measure in, like, oh, okay, that's getting low on gas. I need to go get gas, right? Because that's kind of a big thing. Or my speed or whatever, or oil and temperature and whatnot. So it's going to allow you to check in, going back to that question, like when somebody was observing, what am I doing now? Seeing if you are doing those things to make it to your goal. The hope and desire of all this is not so that you can be able to run a marathon or lose 10 pounds or try to look like you were when you were in high school or something like that. The goal of all this, talking about habits, is so that we and you and we can grow closer to God. And what are those things? And so I want you to ask yourself this question, is what pushes you in that right direction? What pushes you to grow closer to God? What are those things? And I'm just going to share, because I know we could share a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of things could be different if we shared, like, this is what would push me closer to God. This is what would help push me closer to God. This would help, so I know we're all different. But they've done some research in this, and consistently in all those questions or all those answers that people give on what helps them get closer to God and the habits that they develop to get closer to God, 5 things always stand out in everything. So I know there's a little nuance because you might really be personal, different from each other. You might, like, when I go on a hike, I can have this moment to be closer to God. But these are the 5 things that always show up in all the research of pushing people in that right direction is what they respond. These are the things I need. These are the things I need to do to be closer to God. And that is read my Bible, pray, worship, do things with other Christians, and serve. Those are the 5 things. Those are the 5 things universally, when asked across the board, what pushes you closer to God? Those things draw us closer to God. One of those we've been challenged into is praying and developing a praying habit. Of course, that is going to grow. If we do that, that's going to allow us to grow closer to God, but also is going to grow us closer to one another, especially if we're praying for one another. So I'm going to take one of these other ones, read the Bible, right? It's kind of break this down on how do we make this stick. So we have the desire, and remember, desire doesn't take us anywhere, but we have the desire to read the Bible. And so what are we going to do to make it stick? Well, first thing we need to do is make the goal realistic. How are we going to do that? So instead of like, I'm going to read the Bible, right, and then get overwhelmed by that, what you need to do is, I'm going to read the Gospel of Mark. I'm going to see, that's much shorter, right? That's something more tangible. That's something that you can do. I'm going to read the Sermon on the Mount. That's 3 chapters in the Gospel of Matthew. I'm going to read, the letter that James wrote, the book of James, right? And so instead of just looking at, I'm going to read the Bible, and say, like, make it something realistic. I'm going to read this. And that's my goal. My big goal is reading the Bible, but I'm going to start small, right? I'm going to set the nail. And rather than like, I'm going to start in Genesis and read, and once I hit Leviticus, I'm going to totally lose interest because I got lost in it, and it was really boring, and then I never get back to it, and then, I feel guilty and shame. I was supposed to read the Bible. What kind of Christian am I, right? I never even made it into the New Testament. Just like, whatever it is. Or I'm going to read 5 Proverbs a day. right? I'm going to read a psalm a day. It is something that is realistic. And so you make the goal something that's realistic. And you have this realistic commitment, and so it's not just big and vague. Here's the realistic commitment. If we're going to pray, I'm going to pray about these things. I'm going to pray, I'm going to focus right on this. Or I'm going to pray at every dinner. I'm going to pray before I go to bed. Or I'm going to pray when I wake up, right? I'm going to make a realistic commitment. And then you need to set a realistic amount of time. So going in and saying, like, I haven't read the Bible in years. I want to read the Bible, and I'm going to do it an hour a day, right? It's not realistic. The goal's not realistic, and the time set is not realistic, because you're not going to carve out an hour a day to read it because you haven't been doing that, right? And you're going to defeat yourself. You're defeated before you even start. And so you could say, what I'm going to read the Gospel of Mark. I'm just going to read 5 minutes and stop. 5 minutes a day. I'm going to start reading Psalms, and I'll just read for 5 minutes and stop. And I'm not even going to do it every day. I'm going to do it 5 days. Just do it Monday through Friday, right? Or Sunday through Thursday, or something like that. And so you're setting yourself a realistic set amount of time to do that. Even if you were dieting and changing your eating so you can lose weight and build muscle or whatever, the experts will say you don't deprive yourself consistently. Those plans that say, like, this is how you eat and this is the way you need to eat all the rest of your life and stuff like that, don't tend to work with most people. And so they'll even say, okay, eat this way, all right, and every 30 days, go have a shake or something. Go get something that you really like and enjoy to reward yourself, to train yourself, right? That get your pleasure sensors up in your inner mind, saying, like, okay, I'm doing a good thing as I'm retraining how I'm eating and things. One shake is not going to take you off course if you're doing this consistently, realistically. So you make a realistic set amount of time. All right, so you make a realistic commitment, a realistic set of time, and that realistic set of time, I know I gave you some ideas on how to do that, but you want to do this whatever is consistently, not just like, I'm going to do this forever, right? Because there's no end time. What you want to do it consistently for at least 21 days. 21 days. That's like the magic spot, 21 days. Some people say 30. I'm going to say 21 days. 21 days. Because through in 21 days, it begins to start to develop as a habit. But if you ever started something, you got to like day 19, right? Why am I doing this, right? I just want to do it. What you need to do then, is the third thing, is to remind yourself of your why. Remind yourself of your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you losing weight? Why are you wanting to run a marathon, right? Why are you running every day? Why do you want to read the Bible? What's the why? What was the why of the goal? What was the purpose of the goal? So you need to remind yourself that's why you have the dashboard. This is why I'm eating this way. This is why I dedicated myself to pray at this time for this long time. This is why I'm reading. This is why I'm serving. This is the why. And those three things will help you move forward. Whether it is you're trying to create something new that's positive, or you're trying to replace something that is bad. And so I hope this helps, these three lessons. If you missed any of these lessons, I believe they're all on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, to go back and review. So you could always go to YouTube, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Petaluma Church of Christ. But you can just put it in the search thing in there, and that page will come up. And so I just hope this helps, as if you've been struggling to pray for 40 days or whatever, or you've been struggling with anything and trying to create something new within your life, that this will help help you lay that foundation to make those changes in your life, and make this time, this last part of this year, as we go into winter and into our holiday season, that you can look back on 2021 with all of its nastiness and ugliness and say, you know what? Things that turned out pretty good because I did these things. I set these goals and I did that. And now I have a better view of myself. I have a better relationship with God, and I have a better relationship with other people. Because that's what it comes down to. And so let's end with a prayer, and just act as our dismissal prayer too. So when I'm done praying, we will be dismissed for worship. So let's pray. Holy Father, thank you again for this time that we could spend with one another, whether we're here in person or we are watching online through Facebook or later in the week on YouTube, Father. We're just so thankful for all these opportunities to gather and to be part of your church. Father, help us take what we've learned over the past 4 weeks on setting goals, on creating good habits, on changing the things that are our bad habits. Because, Father, what we really want to do is to honor you and to please you. And so, Father, help us examine our lives, where we measure up, where are we going the right direction and where we are going the wrong direction, so that you can inspire us to set before us that direction that we need to go, that's within your will. Father, help us create some great goals that we'll need to rely on you to get to, and these tools that we've been given. Father, help us become more loving of you and more loving of each other and more loving of ourselves. And I pray this in Jesus' holy name. Amen.